The great amphitheater on Accord Prime Station held representatives from 47 different species. Ambassador Minjun Han sat in the human delegation section, watching another day of talks go nowhere. This was day 10, and nothing had changed. The room was enormous, built to make every species feel small. The ceiling stretched high above, covered in lights that mimicked stars. Each delegation sat in curved rows that faced the center stage, where Council Chair Kelsith stood behind a podium made of crystal. Min Jun rubbed his tired eyes. Beside him, Captain Ji-Woo Park reviewed data on her tablet. Dr. Hae-In Choi, their diplomatic specialist, took notes with a stylus. All three wore simple blue suits with Earth's emblem on the shoulder. The Peace Summit was supposed to solve the border conflicts in the Outer Reach territories. Instead, it had become a stage for the powerful species to demand more while the weak species lost everything. The Vrex delegation sat across the chamber. They were tall, with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms. Their military was the strongest in this sector of the galaxy. Next to them sat the Thalmorians, whose worlds produced the rare minerals everyone needed. These 2 species had controlled most of the discussions. "Next testimony," Kelsith announced. His voice came through translators that made it sound flat and emotionless. "The Yanara may present their case." A small figure moved to the center floor. The Yanara looked fragile compared to most species in the room. They stood only 4 feet tall, with soft fur covering their bodies and large, gentle eyes. Their representative trembled slightly as she activated the display screen. "Honored council members," she began. Her voice was quiet, and many delegates had to lean forward to hear. "We present evidence of systematic destruction of our colonies in the disputed zone." The screen showed images that made Min Jun's stomach turn. Burned settlements, empty cities, fields that had been bombed from orbit. The Yanara had built peaceful farming communities on 6 worlds in the Outer Reach. All 6 were now abandoned ruins. "We ask the Council to protect our people," the Yanara representative said. "We ask for our colonies to be recognized as our territory. We have lived there for 3 generations." The presentation ended. The small Yanara stood waiting for a response. Kelsith looked at his notes for a long moment. Then he spoke without looking at the Yanara representative. "The Council acknowledges your testimony. However, minor territorial adjustments are necessary for galactic stability. The Outer Reach territories must be reorganized to prevent future conflicts." "Minor adjustments?" The Yanara's voice cracked. "Those are our homes. 40 million of our people live in those colonies." The Vrex representative stood up. He was twice the height of the Yanara. "Your species chose to build in a strategic zone. That was your mistake. The strong must secure borders. The weak must adapt." Several delegates laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber. Minjun felt his hands form fists under the table. Captain Park touched his arm gently, a warning to stay calm. Kelsith called for a vote. "The proposal is to grant territorial concessions in the Outer Reach. The Yanara and 6 other minor species will relocate their populations. The Vrex and Thalmorians will establish security zones. All in favor?" Hands and appendages rose across the chamber. The powerful species voted yes. The weak species sat frozen, knowing their vote would not matter. "Motion passes," Kelsith said. "The Yanara have 6 standard months to evacuate their colonies." The small representative collapsed to her knees. A soft, crying sound came from the Yanara delegation section. Minjun stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. The sound made several delegates turn to look at him. "Ambassador Han," Kelsith said. "Does Earth wish to speak?" "Yes." Minjun walked to the center floor. His footsteps were loud in the suddenly quiet chamber. "Earth cannot support this decision." "Your objection is noted," Kelsith replied. "However, the vote has concluded." "This is not peace," Min Jun said. His voice was steady but hard. "You are not preventing conflict. You are creating victims and calling it stability. 40 million people will lose their homes. You are voting for their suffering, and you call it a minor adjustment." The Vrex representative laughed. "Your species has been in space for less than a century. You understand nothing of galactic politics." "I understand enough," Min Jun said. "I understand the difference between peace and oppression. What you are building here is not peace." Kelsith's expression did not change. "Ambassador Han, Earth is a junior member of the galactic community. Your opinion carries little weight in these matters." Min Jun looked around the chamber. He saw delegates who looked away from his gaze. He saw others who nodded in agreement with Kelsith. He saw the Yanara representative still kneeling on the floor, her small body shaking. He made his decision. "Captain Park, Dr. Choi," he said clearly. "Gather our materials. We are leaving." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Species spoke over each other in dozens of languages. The translators struggled to keep up. "Leaving." Kelsith stood straighter. "You are walking out of an official peace summit?" "We are walking out of genocide with paperwork," Min Jun replied. He picked up his tablet and papers. "Earth will not participate in institutionalized oppression. We will not put our name on a treaty that destroys innocent populations." Captain Park and Dr. Choi stood. They collected their belongings quickly and efficiently. "This is emotional theatrics from a juvenile species," Kelsith said loudly. "You embarrass yourselves." Min Jun stopped at the chamber exit. He turned back to address the room one final time. "We came to Accord Prime seeking peace. You are negotiating how to divide the weak among the strong. History will judge which side we chose today. We choose to stand with the victims, not the oppressors." The three humans walked out. Their footsteps echoed through the chamber until the massive doors closed behind them. Inside the amphitheater, silence lasted for several heartbeats. Then Kelsith spoke again. "The human delegation's absence is noted and irrelevant. We shall continue." The Vrex representative was smiling. "Let them leave. They control no critical resources. Their military is modest. They have no real power in this galaxy." Several delegates nodded in agreement. The humans had isolated themselves over nothing, but in the Yanara delegation section, the small representative had stopped crying. She was watching the doors where the humans had left. For the first time in 10 days, something that felt like hope stirred in her chest. On the shuttle departing from Accord Prime, Captain Park stared out the window at the receding station. "Ambassador, we just walked away from the most important peace summit in a generation. Earth has no major allies now. We have isolated ourselves." Min Jun looked at the same view. The station grew smaller against the stars. "No, Captain," he said quietly. "We did not isolate ourselves. We refused to be complicit. There is a difference." Dr. Choi closed her tablet. "What do we do now?" Min Jun smiled, though it was a tired expression. "Now we show them what real peace looks like." 3 weeks passed after humanity walked out of the peace talks. The Accord Prime Accords were finalized and signed by 43 species. The document was 300 pages long and used complicated language to describe simple theft. The Vrex and Thalmorians received territorial expansion into the outer reach. The Yanara and 6 other minor species were required to abandon their colony worlds within 6 months. A new enforcement framework gave military authority to a joint patrol force, but the powerful species contributed almost nothing, while the weak species had to give ships, personnel, and resources. Council Chair. Kelsith called it a triumph of diplomatic process. The news networks across the galaxy reported it as a historic peace achievement. Only a few small voices questioned what kind of peace required millions of refugees. Earth made no official protest. The human government issued no angry statements. Ambassador Min Jun Han did not give interviews criticizing the Accords. This surprised many observers who expected humans to cause trouble after their dramatic exit. Instead, humanity did something else entirely. On the fourth day after the Accords were signed, Earth's government made a quiet announcement. All human colony worlds and Earth itself were opening their borders to Yanara refugees. No limits on numbers, no requirements for skills or wealth. Anyone who needed sanctuary would receive it. The Yanara response was immediate. Within a week, the first refugee ships arrived at human ports. Within 2 weeks, millions were in transit. Human colony worlds activated emergency housing programs. Cities expanded overnight. Dr. Hae-in Choi coordinated the settlement efforts from Earth's new Refugee Affairs Office. She worked 18-hour days processing applications, arranging transport, and ensuring every Yanara family had food and shelter. Captain Ji-woo Park commanded a different kind of mission now. The human fleet, modest by galactic standards, was reorganized into humanitarian convoys. Their ships, painted with simple blue crescents, traveled into evacuation zones, loading refugees and supplies. The galaxy watched with confusion. Humans gained nothing from this effort. The Yanara had no valuable resources. They could not offer military alliances. They brought only their need and their gratitude. "Why are the humans doing this?" asked junior analysts at the Galactic Intelligence Bureau. Their supervisors had no good answer. Then something unexpected began to happen. The Selviks were a small species known for their beautiful artwork and craftsmanship. They had signed the Accords under threat, forced to accept new trade restrictions that would destroy their artisan economy. Their delegation sent a secret message to Earth. Could humanity accept Selviks refugees too? Not all of them. Just their artisan caste, the keepers of their cultural traditions. 500,000 people who needed sanctuary. Ambassador Min Jun replied within hours. "Yes, send them." The Mirren came next. They were academics, a species whose greatest achievement was their network of research institutions. The Accords had placed their universities in territories now controlled by the Virex, who saw no value in theoretical science. Could Earth accept their scholars? Yes. Send them. Then came others, species who had signed the Accords but now saw what that signature truly cost. Species who realized the peace they had bought was just slow destruction of everything they valued. 13 species within the first month, 20 within the second. Earth asked nothing in return. No trade agreements, no military commitments, no political favors, just simple offers of sanctuary and support. In the council chambers on Accord Prime, Kelsith called an emergency session of major powers. The Vrex, Thalmorians, and other influential species gathered in a private room. "The human interference must be addressed," Kelsith said. His flat translator voice somehow conveyed irritation. 13 species have withdrawn from council economic frameworks to accept human aid packages. The Virex representative waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Let the humans play charity. We have gained territory. We have secured resources. What do they have? Millions of weak refugees who produce nothing of value." "Nevertheless," Kelsith continued, "the pattern concerns me. The humans are building something." "Building what?" asked the Thalmorian delegate. "They have no military expansion. They claim no territory. They simply take in refugees and offer aid. This is not a threat." But it was becoming one, though none of them recognized it yet. An incident occurred in the 6th week that changed calculations. Captain Park was commanding a convoy of 6 human ships loaded with medical supplies and food. They were traveling through neutral space toward Yanara evacuation points. The convoy moved slowly, broadcasting their humanitarian mission on all frequencies. Vrex warships appeared on their sensors. 3 heavy cruisers, enough firepower to vaporize the entire human convoy. "Human vessels, you are interfering in territories under Vrek's security authority," came the transmission. "Divert your course or face interdiction." Captain Park studied her tactical display. Her 6 ships were transports and a single escort frigate, the Inchen's Light. Against 3 Vrek's cruisers, they had no chance in combat. "Vrek's vessels, we are in neutral space carrying humanitarian supplies," she transmitted back. "We have filed proper flight plans with all local authorities. We are not interfering with any military operations. You will divert or be fired upon." The standoff lasted 6 hours. The Vrek's cruisers maintained weapons lock. Captain Park kept her convoy in formation, neither advancing nor retreating. In that time, she did something simple but effective. She transmitted detailed records of the entire confrontation to 207 species across the galaxy. Live footage of Vrek's warships threatening unarmed medical convoys, audio of the demands to turn back, sensor logs showing human ships carrying nothing but food and medicine. The Vrek's commander must have received orders from his superiors, because suddenly the cruisers powered down their weapons. "Human vessels, you may proceed," came the grudging transmission. The convoy continued to the evacuation zones, but the damage was done. 207 species had watched the Vrek's threaten humanitarian ships. They saw which side was trying to help and which side was stopping them. Public opinion shifted like a tide. Within days, Council intelligence services began reporting a concerning pattern. 27 species had opened diplomatic channels with Earth outside normal Council frameworks. Trade agreements were being signed. Cultural exchanges were being arranged. Technology sharing was being discussed. But these were not normal alliances. There were no military clauses, no territorial demands, no requirements to take sides in conflicts. Humanity was building a network based entirely on mutual aid and voluntary cooperation. It was so unusual that galactic intelligence analysts had no framework to understand it. In the Galactic Intelligence Bureau, senior analysts presented their findings to Council leadership. "What exactly are the humans doing?" Kelseth demanded. "They are creating an alternative system," the chief analyst replied. "Species join not because humans threaten them or bribe them, but because humans help them and ask nothing in return. That makes no strategic sense. No, Chair, it makes no traditional sense, but it is working." The report showed the numbers. 27 species in direct cooperation with humanity. 42 species that had reduced their council engagement levels. 17 species publicly questioning the Accord framework. The Thalmorian delegates studied the data with growing concern. "This is becoming a problem." "A problem?" the Vrek's representative snorted. "They are harboring refugees and playing at charity. Let them. We have real power." But Kelseth was reading deeper into the reports. He saw something that worried him more than military threats or economic competition. The humans were proving a point, not with words or arguments, but with actions. They were showing the galaxy what an alternative looked like, and more species were choosing that alternative every day. On Earth, Dr. Choi presented her weekly report to Ambassador Min Jun and the human government. 27 species have now opened formal diplomatic relations with us outside Council channels, she said. 42 more have increased trade and cultural contacts. We have settlement agreements for refugees from 16 different species. "And what do they want from us?" asked the Earth's Secretary General. "Nothing," Dr. Choi replied. "That seems to be what makes this work. We offer help. We ask nothing in exchange, and they trust us because of that." Min Jun looked at the star map showing Earth's new network of friendly species. It spread across multiple sectors, connecting dozens of worlds. "We did not win the argument at Accord Prime," he said quietly. "So we are proving it through action instead." Captain Park entered the conference room, just arrived from another convoy mission. She looked tired, but satisfied. "Ambassador, I have news from the field. 3 more species have requested humanitarian assistance, and the Kashan Federation has sent an official diplomatic inquiry. The Kashan were not a small species. They were mid-tier, with significant economic power and a modest military. If they were reaching out to humanity, it meant something had changed. "What do they need?" Minjun asked. "That is not clear yet, but they are unhappy with the Accords, very unhappy." Minjun nodded slowly. "Then let us see what we can do to help." In the council chambers, Kelsith stared at the same star map. The blue crescents marking human humanitarian operations covered more and more space. He made a note to himself, monitor human activities closely, but it was already too late. The seeds humanity had planted were growing faster than anyone realized. 4 months had passed since the Prime Accords were signed. The treaty that was supposed to bring peace was creating chaos instead. The enforcement framework required every signatory species to contribute military forces and economic resources to joint patrol forces. The burden was distributed by a complex formula that looked fair on paper, but was devastating in practice. Small species had to give 10% of their fleet capacity and 5% of their gross planetary product. Large species gave 3% and 2%. The math meant that weak species sacrificed everything, while powerful species barely noticed the cost. The Kashan Federation was dying because of it. The Kashan were a mid-tier species with a population of 8 billion spread across 12 colony worlds. They had signed the Accords because refusing meant isolation and economic sanctions. Now that decision was destroying them. Their military contributions stripped their defense fleet to dangerous levels. Their economic contribution drained funds needed for infrastructure and social programs. Within 4 months, the Kashan economy was in free fall. Their representatives stood before the council pleading for help. "We have fulfilled every requirement of the Accords," she said. Her voice carried desperation. "We have sent our ships. We have paid our contributions, but our economy cannot sustain this burden. We request emergency financial assistance from the Treaty Implementation Fund." Council Chair Kelsith reviewed the request with his usual flat expression. Around him, the major powers consulted their advisors. "The Treaty Implementation Fund is currently allocated to infrastructure development in the security zones," Kelsith announced. "There are no available resources for economic assistance." "But those security zones are in Vrex and Thalmorian territories," the Kashan representative protested. "The fund is being used to build their infrastructure, not to help signatories who are suffering." "The fund is being used according to Accord guidelines," Kelsith replied. "Your request is denied." The Kashan representative stood frozen for a moment. Then she walked slowly back to her delegation section. Her people had hoped for help. Instead, they got procedure and rules. The session ended. Species filed out of the chamber. None of them looked at the Kashan delegation. Ambassador Minjun Han watched the broadcast from Earth. He turned to Dr. Hae-In Choi, who had been monitoring Kashan economic data for weeks. "How long do they have?" he asked. 3 months before economic collapse," Dr. Choi replied. "Maybe 4 if they are lucky. Then comes social instability, infrastructure failure, and potential government collapse. And the council will not help them. The council built a system that feeds on the weak to benefit the strong. The Kashan are learning this too late." Min Jun was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "Draft an offer. We will purchase Kashan industrial products at fair market rates. We will provide low-interest development loans, no political conditions, no requirements to leave the Accords, just economic support to keep them stable." Dr. Choi raised an eyebrow. "The Kashan are not refugees. They are a significant economy. This will cost us substantially. Yes, it will also show the galaxy something important." The offer reached the Kashan government within hours. Their leadership held an emergency session. The terms were reviewed by economists, legal experts, and security advisors. Everyone looked for the trap, the hidden clause, the political price. There was none. Earth was offering exactly what it claimed: economic support, fairly traded, with interest rates below galactic standards and no strings attached. The Kashen accepted within a day. Human merchant vessels began arriving at Kashen ports within a week. They purchased manufactured goods, processed materials, and specialty products. The credits flowed into the Kashen economy like medicine into a dying patient. Development loans followed. Human financial institutions worked with Kashen banks to fund infrastructure repairs, factory upgrades, and social programs. The terms were generous. The timeline was flexible. Within 3 weeks, the Kashen economy stabilized. Within 6 weeks, it was growing again. The Kashen government made a public statement thanking Earth for preventing their economic collapse. They praised human generosity and fairness. They noted that humanity asked for nothing except honest trade and friendship. The statement was broadcast across the galaxy. Suddenly, every species that had signed the accords began asking uncomfortable questions. Why was the Treaty Implementation Fund building infrastructure for the Vrex but not helping the Kashen? Why did the enforcement framework burden small species so heavily? Why did the powerful species gain territory and resources while weak species lost everything? And most importantly, why did humanity help when the Council would not? The comparison was stark and impossible to ignore. The accords cost weak species dearly and gave them nothing. Humanity asked nothing and gave generously. 17 species formally announced they were reviewing their relationship with the Council structure itself. In the Council chambers, Kelsith faced unprecedented criticism. Delegates who normally stayed quiet were asking pointed questions. Species who had always supported Council decisions were demanding explanations. The accords were negotiated in good faith, Kelsith said. His translator voice sounded defensive now. Every signatory agreed to the terms. We agreed because refusing meant isolation, said a delegate from a small herbivorous species. We agreed because you told us this was peace. Instead, you built a system that extracts our resources to benefit a few powerful species. The enforcement framework treats all species equally under the formula, Kelsith replied. The formula is designed to look equal while being brutally unfair, another delegate countered. A small species giving 10% of their fleet is sacrificing their security. A large species giving 3% barely notices. This is not equality. The debate continued for hours. More species voiced complaints. More delegates questioned decisions that had seemed final just months ago. The Vrex representative stood to speak. His forearms crossed in a gesture of contempt. This is human interference, he declared loudly. They are undermining the accords with their charity. They are trying to turn the galaxy against us. They are showing us an alternative, came a response from the Selvix delegation. And we are choosing it. The Vrex representative's expression turned dangerous. He looked around the chamber, seeing too many nods of agreement. Very well, he said. The Vrex Dominion makes this declaration. Any species that accepts human aid will be considered hostile to accord interests. Any species that continues economic cooperation with Earth will face consequences. It was meant to be a threat that would force species back into line. Instead, it was gasoline on a fire. Within 24 hours, 31 species issued responses. All of them said the same thing in different words. They would not be threatened. They would not be forced to refuse help. They would cooperate with whoever they chose. Many of those responses announced expanded partnerships with humanity. The Vrex threat had backfired completely. Instead of intimidating species back into compliance, it pushed them further toward Earth's alternative network. Captain Ji-Woo Park reviewed intelligence reports in her ready room aboard the Inchen's Light. The data was remarkable. Human merchant vessels were now more welcome in most ports than Council patrol craft. Species were actively seeking human trade agreements. Cultural exchanges were multiplying. Technology sharing programs were being established. The Vrex tried to use fear, she said to her first officer. But fear only works when people have no alternative. Humanity gave them an alternative. Her first officer nodded. The intelligence also shows something else. Minor species are starting to coordinate with each other through human communication networks. They are talking to each other, sharing information, and organizing. Organizing for what? To protect their interests, to resist exploitation, to build something better than the Council gave them. Captain Park smiled slightly. We did not plan that. No, but we created the conditions that made it possible. On Earth, Ambassador Min-jun met with representatives from 40 species that were now part of humanity's mutual aid network. They called it the Framework Network, a name that had emerged naturally from their conversations. The representatives had a question. Would Earth consider formalizing this network into an official structure, not a replacement for the Council, but an alternative framework for cooperation based on mutual respect and voluntary participation? Min-jun considered carefully. If we formalize too early, it looks like we are trying to split the galaxy. If we wait too long, we miss the opportunity to give this network real structure. What do you recommend? Asked the Yanara representative. She had grown confident in the months since her people were saved. Her voice no longer trembled. I recommend we let it grow naturally, Min-jun replied. We provide the principles: mutual aid, fair trade, voluntary cooperation, protection of all members regardless of size or power. But we do not force anyone to join. We do not require commitments. We simply continue being what we have been. And what is that? Asked the Kashen representative. Reliable, fair, principled. Let others choose whether that is what they want. The meeting ended with agreement. The Framework Network would remain informal, but would continue growing through trust and demonstrated results. In the council chambers, Kelsith sat alone after another difficult session. 40 species had now reduced their council engagement. 17 had formally withdrawn from various frameworks. The accords themselves were facing potential collapse as signatory species refused to continue enforcement contributions. An aide brought him a report from Council intelligence. The data showed that humanity's network was more influential than Council economic frameworks in 2/3 of galactic sectors. Kelsith read the report twice. Then he read the conclusion that intelligence analysts had drawn. The humans did not defeat us militarily. They did not out-negotiate us. They simply built something better and let the galaxy choose. For the first time since the peace talks began, Kelsith wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. Not in the accords themselves, but in something more fundamental. They had believed power was all that mattered. The humans had proved them wrong. The question was whether it was too late to fix what they had broken. 8 months had passed since Ambassador Min-jun Han walked out of the peace talks. The galaxy had changed in ways no one predicted. Council Chair Kelsith convened an emergency session in a private chamber. Only senior members attended. The Vrex, Thalmorians, and other major powers sat around a circular table. Their expressions ranged from concern to anger. The situation has become critical, Kelsith began without preamble. 34 species have withdrawn from various council frameworks. Galactic trade routes are reorganizing around human-friendly ports. The Accord Prime Accords are failing. Failing is too gentle a word, said a Thalmorian admiral. They have collapsed. 6 signatory species have stopped enforcement contributions entirely. 8 more are threatening to follow. The Joint Patrol Force is falling apart. The Vrex representative slammed one of his 4 hands on the table. This is human interference. They have poisoned the galaxy against us with their charity and soft words. They have done nothing aggressive, a delegate from the Zentari species pointed out. The Zentari were normally council supporters. Their doubt was telling. They simply offered an alternative, and species chose it. Because they do not understand galactic politics, the Vrex countered. They do not see the necessity of strong enforcement. They do not comprehend that order requires power. Kelsith raised a hand for silence. An investigation has been completed into the failure of the Accords. The findings are clear and uncomfortable. He activated a holographic display. Data filled the space above the table. Economic flows, resource allocation, military burdens. All of it tracked and analyzed over the 8 months since the treaty was signed. The peace talks failed, Kelsith said quietly. Not because they ended conflict, but because they institutionalized it. We created a system where the strong extracted resources from the weak under a veneer of legitimacy. We called it peace, but it was merely organized exploitation. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the data. Every projection shows increasing instability, Kelsith continued. The Accords are accelerating the very conflicts they were meant to prevent, and there is only one stabilizing force in current galactic politics. The humans, said the Thalmorian admiral. It was not a question. Yes, their network of mutual aid and voluntary cooperation. It provides what our structure does not: genuine security, fair treatment, respect for all species. The Vrex representative stood abruptly. Then we must act. We must stop them before they completely undermine Council authority. I propose military action against human interference. You propose war with Earth? The Zentari delegate asked, shocked. I propose enforcement action. We censure Earth. We authorize sanctions. If necessary, we demonstrate that Council authority cannot be ignored. Let us vote, Kelsith said tiredly. He knew this moment would come. The motion was called. Censure Earth. Authorize potential enforcement actions up to and including military response. This was the crisis point. If it passed, the galaxy would face war. Before the vote could begin, something happened that had never occurred in Council history. A junior delegate requested the floor. Not a major power, not even a mid-tier species. The Yanara representative stood and asked to speak. Kelsith hesitated. Allowing this broke protocol. But something in the moment made him agree. The Yanara may speak. The small representative walked to the center of the chamber. She looked even smaller in this room of powerful species, but her voice was steady. 8 months ago, I stood before the full council and begged for help. I showed you evidence of our colonies being destroyed. I asked you to protect 40 million of my people. You voted to relocate us, to take our homes, to call our suffering a minor adjustment. She paused, looking at each delegate in turn. The humans walked out that day. I did not understand why at the time. I thought perhaps they were naive. Perhaps they were too emotional for galactic politics. But I understand now. They walked out because they saw what you were building. A system where the powerful decide which species deserve protection and which can be sacrificed. They refused to participate in that system. And then they showed us something else. They opened their worlds to us. They asked nothing in return. They treated us with dignity. Today, 5 million Yanara live on human worlds and our own preserved colonies. We are safe because humanity chose principle over politics. She gestured to the chamber entrance. Other delegates were entering. The Selviks, the Mirren, the Kashen, 20 other species, all with stories similar to the Yanara. You wish to vote on censuring Earth, the Yanara representative said. Before you do, hear from those they have helped. For the next hour, delegates spoke. Each told the same essential story. They faced crisis. The Council offered nothing or demanded too much. Humanity helped freely. Humanity asked nothing. Humanity treated them as equals. The Kashan representative spoke of economic collapse prevented. The Selvik spoke of cultural traditions saved. The Mirren spoke of knowledge preserved. On and on, 20 species testified. The Rex representative tried to interrupt multiple times. Kelseth, to his credit, let the testimony continue. When the last species finished, silence filled the chamber. "Now vote," Kelseth said softly. The result was catastrophic for the Vrex. Only the Vrex themselves and 2 client species voted in favor of censure. 40 species voted against. 15 abstained, including several major powers. The motion failed utterly. The Vrex representative stormed out, making threats as he left. His delegation followed. Kelseth called for a recess. In a private chamber, he met with the most senior council members. These were species who had been part of galactic politics for centuries. They sat in heavy silence. "We have lost control," said an elder from the Tarloxian collective. "Not through military defeat, not through economic collapse, through moral failure." Another elder nodded slowly. "The humans showed us a mirror. We did not like what we saw." "It is worse than that," Kelseth said. He pulled up more data. Council intelligence has completed their analysis. Humanity's network is now more influential than our economic frameworks in 2/3 of the galaxy. They achieved this in 8 months, without threats, without coercion, through principle and action. "What do we do?" someone asked. The question hung in the air. The most powerful political body in the galaxy had no answer. Finally, the Tarloxian elder spoke. "We asked them to come back." "They walked out on principle," Kelseth said. "Why would they return?" "Because their principle is cooperation and peace. If we truly seek that now, perhaps they will help us." A younger delegate objected. "They have no reason to help us. We dismissed them. We called them naive. We ignored everything they said." "That is precisely why they might help," the elder replied. "Because doing so would be right, regardless of how we treated them. That seems to be how they make decisions." Kelseth considered this. It was a strange way to think about politics, but then everything about humanity was strange from a traditional perspective. "Very well," he said. "I will send a preliminary contact through a neutral intermediary. We will ask if Earth would consider returning to negotiations." The session ended. Delegates filed out slowly, each processing what had happened. The council had just acknowledged it was wrong. That admission had cost them greatly. In a secure communication room, Kelseth drafted a message. He chose his words carefully. This had to convey genuine intent without appearing weak. It had to acknowledge mistakes without accepting full blame. It had to invite negotiation without begging. After several drafts, he settled on simple honesty. To Ambassador Minjun Han of Earth, the Galactic Council recognizes errors in the Accord Prime process and requests dialogue regarding framework improvements. Your perspective would be valued. It was cautious, diplomatic. But underneath the formal language was a truth everyone now understood. They needed humanity more than humanity needed them. Kelseth sent the message through a mid-tier species that maintained good relations with both the Council and Earth. Then he waited. On Earth, Ambassador Min Jun received the message 3 days later. He read it twice, then called a meeting with Captain Jiwoo Park, Dr. Hae-in Choi, and Earth's senior government officials. "The Council wants us back," he said simply. "They want our influence back," Captain Park corrected. "That is not the same as understanding why we left." Agreed. But it is an opening. Dr. Choi pulled up data on her tablet. "Our network currently includes 43 species in direct cooperation, 60 more in various trade and cultural agreements. We have more diplomatic capital now than we did 8 months ago. Which means we can negotiate from strength," said Earth's Secretary General. "What are our terms?" Minjun looked at the star map showing their network of mutual aid and cooperation. The blue crescents marking human humanitarian operations covered 1/3 of the known galaxy now. "Our terms are the same as they were 8 months ago," he said. "Real peace, not peace for the powerful at the expense of the weak, peace that protects everyone." Will they accept that? I do not know, but we will find out. He began drafting a response. Not a refusal, but not an easy acceptance either. Earth would meet with the Council, but on humanity's terms. The galaxy was about to learn what those terms meant. Ambassador Min Jun Han consulted with Earth's government and the 43 species in humanity's mutual aid network. The question was not whether to meet with the Council. The question was under what conditions. They want us back because we have become influential, Min Jun said during a conference with Earth's leadership. That does not mean they understand why we left. Dr. Hai-In Choi nodded in agreement. If we return too easily, nothing changes. We become part of their system, and our principles get compromised slowly over time. But if we refuse entirely, we miss the chance to actually reform things, Captain Ji Woo Park added. We have proven our alternative works. Now we can push for real change. After 3 days of consultation, Earth sent its response to the Council. The message was polite but firm. Earth will meet with Council representatives to discuss framework improvements. However, the meeting will occur on human territory. The Yinara and other affected species will participate as equal parties. The Accord Prime Accords are subject to complete renegotiation, not minor revision. The conditions were unprecedented. The Council always met on their territory. Minor species never participated as equals. Signed treaties were never fully renegotiated. Council Chair Kelsith read the message with a mixture of frustration and resignation. Part of him wanted to reject these demands. But the practical reality was clear. Without Earth's cooperation, the galactic political system was falling apart. We accept their terms, he told his senior advisors. Prepare a delegation. The location was chosen carefully. Haven, a human colony world where Yinara refugees had built thriving settlements alongside human colonists. The visual message would be clear. This was what walking out of the Accords had protected. 3 weeks later, the Council delegation arrived. Kelsith led the group personally. The Thalmorian admiral came, along with representatives from 20 major and mid-tier species. Notably absent were the Vreks. They had refused to participate and withdrawn to their own territories, threatening to form a separate alliance. The shuttles landed at Haven's primary spaceport. As the delegates disembarked, they saw a city that should not exist. Yinara architecture blended seamlessly with human construction. Gardens that matched Yinara aesthetic preferences surrounded buildings designed to human engineering standards. Children of both species played together in parks. Market stalls sold goods from dozens of worlds, all traded freely and fairly. This is what you walked out to protect, the Thalmorian admiral said quietly to Kelsith. 40 million lives that we voted to displace. The negotiation site was a conference center built specifically for this meeting. Inside, the room was arranged differently from council chambers. No raised podiums, no sections divided by species. Just a large circular table where everyone sat as equals. The Yinara representative was there. So were representatives from the Selviks, Mirren, Kashen, and 12 other species whose futures had been decided at Accord Prime without their meaningful input. Ambassador Min Jun opened the meeting with a simple statement. We are not here to punish anyone or claim moral superiority. We are here because we believe real peace is possible, not peace that requires some to suffer for others to prosper. Not peace that is merely organized exploitation with better paperwork. Actual peace, where all species are protected and respected. Kelsith absorbed those words. Then he did something remarkable. He spoke without diplomatic language or careful deflection. The Accord Prime process was flawed. We built a system that benefited the powerful at the expense of the weak. We told ourselves this was necessary for stability. Ambassador Han, you saw through that justification immediately. You were right. We were wrong. The admission shocked many delegates. Council chairs did not admit mistakes. The question now, Kelsith continued, is whether we can build something better. We are here to listen to your requirements. Minjun glanced at Dr. Choi, who had prepared the framework document. She distributed copies to all delegates. These are humanity's requirements for any new agreement, Minjun said. They are not negotiable, though their implementation can be discussed. The delegates read through the document. With each paragraph, the scale of change became clearer. First requirement: all territorial concessions from the Accord Prime Accords must be reversed or fairly compensated. Species cannot be forced from their homes for strategic convenience. Second requirement: council voting procedures must be reformed to prevent majority tyranny. No decision that dramatically affects a species can be made without that species having veto power over their own fate. Third requirement: an independent humanitarian oversight committee must approve any future territorial adjustments. This committee will have representatives from small and large species in equal numbers. Fourth requirement: the enforcement framework must be rebuilt on actual mutual defense, not resource extraction. Contributions must be proportional to ability, not designed to burden the weak. The room was silent as delegates finished reading. The Thalmorian admiral spoke first. These requirements would fundamentally change how galactic politics operates. Yes, Minjun replied simply. That is the point. You are asking the powerful to give up advantages they have held for centuries. We are asking everyone to build something better than exploitation with rules. Before anyone else could speak, something unexpected happened. The Vrex delegation had not attended the meeting, but a message arrived from them, broadcast on all channels. The Vrex representative appeared on screens, announcing that the Vrex Dominion rejected all proposed changes. They would form their own alliance with species who understood that power and strength were the true basis of galactic order. Any species wishing to join their alliance would be welcomed. It was meant to be a dramatic gesture that would peel away council support and intimidate others into rejecting humanity's framework. The response was not what the Vrex expected. Within an hour, only 2 client species expressed interest in the Vrex alliance. Even the Thalmorians, their closest traditional partners, sent a polite but firm refusal. We have seen where that path leads, the Thalmorian admiral said when asked about their decision. We prefer to try this new direction. The message was clear. The galaxy had changed. The old assumptions about power no longer held. Back at Haven, the negotiations continued for 3 weeks. The discussions were difficult. Powerful species had to accept limitations on their authority. Weak species had to learn to advocate for themselves effectively. Traditional ways of doing things had to be discarded. But slowly, painfully, a new framework emerged. The Framework Accords were finally drafted. They contained humanity's 4 core requirements, plus dozens of additional protections and procedures. The voting system was reformed to protect minority rights. The enforcement structure was rebuilt around genuine mutual defense. An independent oversight committee was established with real authority. Most importantly, the document's preamble contained a single principle that had not existed in the Accord Prime Accords. No peace can be built on oppression. Any agreement that requires some species to suffer for others to prosper is not peace, but merely delayed conflict. The signing ceremony occurred on Haven, in a garden where Yanara children were playing nearby. The symbolism was intentional. This was what they were protecting. Not abstract political principles, but actual lives and futures. 47 species signed the Framework Accords. The Vrex and their 2 client species did not. They withdrew to their territories, issuing threats that everyone understood were empty. As delegates prepared to depart, the Yanara elder who had testified at the council approached Ambassador Minjun privately. You risked everything for us, she said. Your influence, your relationships, your standing in the galaxy. Why? Min-jun looked at the children playing in the garden. Human and Yanara youngsters chasing each other, laughing in the universal language of childhood. Because someone has to believe that doing the right thing matters more than doing the convenient thing, he replied. 8 months ago, it felt like we were alone in that belief, but we were not alone for long. The elder smiled, a gesture that crossed species barriers. No, you showed us what was possible. You reminded us what principles were. Captain Park stood at the spaceport, watching the delegate ships depart. Dr. Choi joined her, looking satisfied but exhausted. We changed galactic civilization, Dr. Choi said, not through war or economic domination, through refusing to accept what everyone called inevitable. Do you think it will last? Captain Park asked. The Accords themselves? Perhaps. Perhaps not. But we have proven something more important. We have shown that building systems based on fairness and mutual respect actually works better than building them on power and exploitation. Captain Park nodded. And now 47 species understand that. Even if the Accords fail, that knowledge remains. On Earth, the news of the Framework Accord signing was met with quiet satisfaction rather than celebration. Humanity had not set out to reshape galactic politics. They had simply refused to participate in something they knew was wrong. The consequences of that refusal had rippled across the galaxy. Millions of refugees saved. Dozens of species given hope and alternatives. An entire political system forced to acknowledge its flaws and reform. Ambassador Min-jun received thousands of messages in the days after the signing. Many thanked him for his courage. Some criticized him for taking risks. A few asked how Earth had managed to change so much so quickly. His response was always the same. We did not change anything. We simply stood by our principles and let others decide if those principles were worth standing beside. The treaty was transmitted across the galaxy, carrying a new symbol. The blue crescent of humanity's aid ships, now adopted as the emblem of the Framework Accords. The symbol represented something simple but powerful: help freely given. Dignity universally respected. Peace built on fairness rather than force. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had not outmaneuvered their rivals in political games. They had not built a vast alliance through threats and bribes. They had simply walked out of a meeting 8 months ago because they refused to be complicit in injustice. And in that refusal, they had reminded the galaxy that principles, consistently applied, could be more powerful than any fleet or any threat. The Vrex remained in their territories, diminished and isolated. The Council reformed itself around new principles. Dozens of species began building relationships based on mutual respect rather than power dynamics. And in gardens across Haven and hundreds of other worlds, children played together. Yenera and Human and Selvix and Mirren, growing up in a galaxy that was slowly learning an old lesson that humanity had never forgotten. Doing the right thing matters, even when it costs you, even when you stand alone. Especially then, because if you hold to your principles long enough, others will remember they have principles too, and together you can build something worth having.